They fired me on a Tuesday. Cold morning, gray sky, the kind of day that already feels like a warning. I'd stayed late the night before, poured 16 years of my life into one last pitch, an email with 3 attachments that could have changed everything. The kind of idea that doesn't just save a company, it rewrites its future. I knew they wouldn't see it coming. That was the point. But what I didn't expect was that they wouldn't even bother to read it. Just a 10-minute meeting, a couple of blank stares, and a polite shove out the door. My name's Matthew Clark. I'm 44 years old, divorced, 1 kid in college, and I'd worked in the same office since before smartphones were a thing. I wasn't flashy. Never climbed the corporate ladder with charm or favors. I got there through grit, showing up early, doing the work no one wanted, and making sense of problems other people ignored. Strategic planning was my lane, but titles never mattered much to me. What mattered was building something real, solving the puzzles that kept others up at night. People came to me when deals stalled or when systems broke. I wasn't always thanked, but I was trusted. Until I wasn't. I'd started noticing the signs about 6 weeks before it all went down. Small things, really. My weekly calendar suddenly emptier, budget approvals getting rerouted, and my boss, a younger guy named Derek, started copying legal on emails that never needed a CC before. That's how it starts, in corporate America. Not with fireworks, but with the quiet hum of isolation. People pull back like you're contagious. No one tells you what's happening, but they all act like you already know. You become a ghost in your own office. I didn't confront anyone. That's not how you survive in a place like that. Instead, I started putting my thoughts together. Years of internal data, vendor insights, competitive gaps. Things I'd picked up and logged quietly over time, just in case. I worked on it at night, at home, after my son had gone to bed. My idea wasn't just another internal memo. It was a strategy that could have restructured our client services model and automated 2/3 of our cost-heavy operations. It was lean, scalable, and rooted in everything I'd learned the hard way. I packaged it in a deck, attached supporting sheets, and wrote a summary sharp enough to cut through noise. I hit send at 11:42 p.m., the night before they fired me. The subject line read, Optimizing Q3, Proposal Attached. Simple. Director? I knew Derek probably wouldn't look at it. He liked ideas that came from consultants with white teeth and nicer suits. But still, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd open it. Maybe he'd see it for what it was. He didn't. And that was his first mistake. The morning they let me go, I walked out with nothing but my coat and the envelope they'd slid across the table. HR jargon printed in 12-point font, and a severance offer barely generous enough to feel like an insult. I didn't argue. I didn't even speak. I just nodded, stood up, and walked out. I remember passing the reception desk and nodding to Carla, who looked up at me with the kind of pity people save for funerals. I gave her a half smile, like I was the one who should be apologizing. My car was parked in the far lot, where senior staff used to park before the last reorg blurred the lines between rank and file. As I crossed the lot, the cold wind cut right through my shirt. It felt like January, even though it was only October. I sat behind the wheel, hands on the steering wheel for a long time, just breathing. I wasn't angry yet. Anger comes later. At first, it's just a hollow feeling. The kind that makes your hands tremble a bit, not from fear, but from disbelief. 16 years, not even a thank you. When I got home, the first thing I did was check my personal email. I still had a copy of the deck. I'd BCC'd myself, just in case. The proposal was there, untouched, unopened by Derek or anyone else. I clicked into the Analytics tab on the file link I'd sent. 0 views. Nothing. Not even a glance. That part stung more than the termination itself. You spend nights building something you know could change the game, and they don't even give you the courtesy of looking at it before cutting you loose. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room couch with a glass of bourbon and the soft hum of the fridge filling the silence. I started reading through the proposal again, not to change anything, just to remind myself I wasn't crazy. It held up. Clean, focused, numbers tight, implications mapped out. It had taken me 6 weeks to build, but really it was the product of 16 years of watching what worked and what didn't. And then I started thinking about what to do next. I wasn't the type to throw a tantrum online or beg for my job back, but I wasn't about to let them bury that work and pretend it didn't exist either. I had leverage, they just didn't know it yet. You see, Derek made a second mistake, one he wouldn't realize for a while. He fired me without a non-compete in place. No exit interview, no legal paperwork beyond the severance. Nothing to stop me from walking out the door with everything I knew and using it somewhere else. Somewhere smarter. That night, around 3 a.m., I opened a new tab, typed out a short email, and sent the proposal to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost a decade. And that's when things really started moving. The person I emailed at 3 a.m. was Rachel McAdams. Not the actress, though she jokes about it every time someone brings it up. Rachel and I had worked together back in 2011, when we were both just clawing our way up from middle management. She was sharp, grounded, and didn't play office politics unless she had to. We'd lost touch after she moved to the West Coast to take a senior role at a rising tech firm. I'd heard she'd eventually made it to COO, and if anyone would understand what I'd built, it was her. The subject line was simple. Something you should see. The message read, "Rachel, long time. I've just been let go, but before that happened, I spent the last few months developing a framework I think your team might find valuable. It's clean, scalable, and I know your org could execute it better than anyone. Take a look. Hope you're well. Matt Clark." I expected to wait days, maybe a week. She replied in less than 2 hours. Matt, holy hell, this is incredible. I want to talk. You free later today? By 4:30 p.m., I was on a video call with her and 2 people from her executive team. They'd already gone through the deck twice, and I could see the gears turning behind their eyes. Rachel looked at me through the camera, her voice calm but clipped with energy. "You're telling me this was sitting in your inbox when they let you go?" I nodded. "And no one read it?" Not even a click. She shook her head. Idiots. They didn't need long to make a decision. They wanted to bring me on. Not in a full-time role, not yet, but as a strategic consultant. 6 months, project-based, with full license to build out the model. Generous compensation, too. Twice my old salary and full autonomy. More importantly, they weren't looking to bury the idea. They wanted to move fast, to use it, build on it, make it real. That night I told my son. He's 19, a sophomore studying economics. He looked at me over his bowl of instant noodles and said, "So you're like, doing a revenge arc?" I laughed. Not revenge, just correction. But part of me knew it was revenge. Not the loud, messy kind. The kind that moves slow, deliberate. The kind that builds a new tower while the old one rots from the top down. I wasn't out to burn anything. I didn't have to. I just had to succeed where they thought I was disposable. The most satisfying part? They still had no idea what they'd thrown away. No idea the email even existed. Yet. The next few weeks were a blur of momentum, the kind of work that makes your brain ache in the best way. Rachel's team gave me resources, access, and trust. That last part was the most foreign. After years of pitching ideas that went nowhere unless they came from someone with the right title or pedigree, it was jarring, rejuvenating, to have people actually listen. They asked smart questions, challenged my assumptions. improved the model in ways I hadn't even considered, and most importantly, they moved. No red tape, no layers of approval, just action. We turned my original proposal into a pilot within 3 weeks. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It just had to prove the concept. And it did. The automation protocol alone shaved 18% off their logistics overhead in the first test region. We projected full deployment would cut annual costs by 7 figures. Rachel looped in the CEO, then the board. They were stunned. Not just by the results, but by how much value had been left on the table simply because no one else had looked in the right place. And me? I was back in my element. But this time, with sharper tools and fewer political landmines, I wasn't navigating office egos or sitting through meetings that could have been emails. I was building again. I worked from home, mostly, sometimes from a quiet booth at a local cafe, headphones in, zoning out the world. It felt like I'd finally stepped into the version of my career I was meant to have all along. But the past has a way of circling back. About a month into the project, I got a LinkedIn message from a guy named Tom Reynolds. He used to report to me back at my old job. Solid analyst, young, hungry, the kind of guy who stayed late not to impress anyone, but because he actually cared. His message was short. "Hey Matt, just wanted to say things feel different since you left. Derek's been scrambling. Something's going on. Your name's come up a few times. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Appreciate the heads up. Tell Derek I said hi." I didn't owe Derek anything. But part of me wondered, had someone finally read the email? Had they dug it up, weeks too late, only to realize what they'd discarded? Or was it something else? Maybe someone from legal had finally flagged that no NDA or non-compete had ever been signed? Either way, the silence coming from that side of the city suddenly had weight to it. Still, I didn't reach out. Let them sweat, let them wonder. Because by then, I wasn't just helping Rachel's company. I was getting calls, referrals, introductions, interest from other firms who'd heard whispers about what we were building. The kind of whispers that make people ask, "Who's behind this?" And soon enough, they'd all know the answer. 2 months after my termination, I found myself standing in front of a small but serious audience, investors, board members, and senior leadership, pitching my system like it was a Silicon Valley seed round. Only this wasn't some napkin sketch or theory-heavy roadmap. This was a living, tested process with data to back it up. As I spoke, I saw heads nodding, pens jotting notes, side glances exchanged. That quiet moment when people realize they're looking at something real, something bankable, something they almost missed. When the meeting ended, Rachel pulled me aside. "They're in," she said, her voice low but grinning. "They want to scale this immediately, and they want you leading it. Full-time if you're ready." I took a breath. "Yeah, I'm ready." We negotiated the offer over the next few days. It wasn't just good, it was redemptive. Equity, an executive title, the freedom to build a full team under me. I signed the contract on a Monday morning with coffee in one hand and a quiet sense of justice in the other. That same week, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Derek. His voice was hesitant, polished thin like someone trying to sound casual while standing on a ledge. "Hey, Matt. Listen, I was going through some of your older folders, and I came across this email. Subject line said something about Q3 optimization." I let the silence stretch. "Oh?" I said. "That was a while ago." Yeah, listen, I think there's something really valuable in there. I don't know how it slipped through the cracks, but you already fired me." He laughed nervously. "Right, yeah, but, I mean, if you're open to consulting again, I think we could work something out. Maybe bring you in on a contract basis. Revisit some of those ideas. The team's been—" I cut him off. "Derek," I said calmly, "you had your shot. I sent you something that could have reshaped the company. You deleted it without even reading it. Now it's someone else's foundation, and they knew what to do with it." He was quiet. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth on the other end. "All right," he finally said. "Just figured I'd ask." Click. No part of me enjoyed hanging up. Not in the way people expect, at least. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt finished. Like something heavy had finally settled into place. Derek would go back to his board, his slide decks, and his polished nothingness, and I'd go back to building. The real revenge wasn't about making them pay. It was that they no longer mattered. I had something better. Proof that I never needed their permission to be great. 3 months later, I was on a flight to Denver for a partner summit, flipping through slides on my laptop when it hit me. This was the first time in over a decade that I actually looked forward to work. Not tolerated it, not endured it for the paycheck or the 401k match or the illusion of security. I felt alive again. The kind of alive that only comes from being underestimated, pushed out, and then rising back up on your own terms. Rachel's company had expanded my framework into 3 verticals. What started as one email attachment had become a full-scale transformation project that other firms were now trying to license. They asked me to lead a breakout session at the summit titled, "Finding Value in What Others Overlook." I didn't name it, but damn if it didn't feel personal. Before stepping up to speak, I looked around the conference room. Industry people, CEOs, analysts, investors, all waiting to hear from the guy whose name no one had known 6 months ago. And now? Now they wanted to know how I saw the gaps they missed, how I pulled results out of the shadows. They didn't know the backstory. They didn't know I was almost discarded like dead weight. But I did. And I never forgot. When the session ended, a man approached me. Gray suit, polished smile, a VP at a rival firm. "Matt Clark, right? Heard your name come up last week in our board meeting. We should talk." I shook his hand. "I think we will." Later that night, back in the hotel, I pulled up the original email I'd sent Derek. It was still sitting in my sent folder, untouched, unread, time-stamped the night before he let me go. There was something poetic about it, like the start of a story he never finished because he didn't know what he was holding. I didn't delete it. I just archived it. A small, quiet reminder of how easily some people throw away gold when it doesn't come with a shiny label. That story doesn't end with headlines or lawsuits. It ends with a man sitting in a hotel room, knowing he was never the problem. Knowing that sometimes the best thing they can do for you is show you the door. The attachments were worth millions. But the freedom? That turned out to be priceless.